You had your 35 minutes. Shut up.
There's a sexual harassment enterprise there at Fox.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the
It has resulted in the arrest of men that are preying on our most precious resource, our children.
It is the worst evil I have ever seen in my life.
Searching for accountability in a culture of anything goes, whistleblowing on bad behavior has garnered a populist push. Is the court of public opinion gaining a new kind of authority? And just who sets the rules of what is and is not bad behavior? Today, a look into the heart of the disgraceful and hair-raising behaviors of everyday people, leaders in positions of power, public servants, and the accountability being called for among the scandals that people are determined to stop. I'm Lorna Dueck.
I'm Sheldon Neal.
And I'm Molly Thomas.
And you're watching Context. Coming up, a David versus Goliath story, how a Canadian columnist took on Fox powerhouse host Bill O'Reilly. Is bad behavior increasingly being called to the carpet? We look for answers. What to do when a Christian senator is caught in scandal. Reverend David Wells, who serves over 250,000 constituents in churches across Canada, tells us how important accountability is when we lose our moral compass.
When I get up in the morning and I'm going out of my house, I've got keys between my fingers, ready to hit someone in defense.
Young Canadian women speak out on everyday experiences that may shock you. Lots to come, and here are some of the news stories that caught our attention. Disturbing news out of Edmonton, where a toddler was found dead near a church and is believed to have been lying there for at least 3 days. 19-month-old Anthony Joseph Rain was found dead, covered in bruises. Police say he had been living in a violent environment. The boy's father and girlfriend have been charged with second-degree murder. President Trump has gone on another tirade with his protectionist policies. This time, Canada's softwood lumber industry is his next target.
People don't realize Canada's been very rough on the United States. They've outsmarted our politicians for many years, so we did institute a very big tariff.
The issue has been a major trade irritant between Canada and the U.S. for the past 2 centuries, with Canada oftentimes winning out. Mr. Trump now wants to strike a new deal that better suits the U.S. before NAFTA negotiations reopen. $6 billion a year and thousands of Canadian jobs could be on the line with Trump demanding new conditions. And the food crisis intensifies in Yemen. Every 10 minutes, a child dies from starvation.
We are facing a tragedy. This is preventable if the international community takes decisive action.
This is just one of 4 countries in need of emergency food right now. In South Sudan, the civil war is making the famine worse. In northern Nigeria, thousands are lining up for food rations that are running short. Somalia still hasn't seen solid rains. 71,000 children are at risk of death, and behind them is another 343,000 in acute malnutrition. If you want to know more about how you can help these countries in need, visit our website and watch our special coverage from Somalia. Well, on the show today, outrageous, disgraceful, and just plain bad behavior. And the man facing the largest outcry and who has many in the public square in an uproar is the king of cable. Fox News host Bill O'Reilly is off the airwaves after revelations that he and the network paid millions to settle allegations of sexual harassment against multiple women. Well-versed on Bill O'Reilly is John Doyle, an award-winning columnist for the Globe and Mail. Molly Thomas met up with him in downtown Toronto.
I want to ask about you taking on one of the biggest media machines in the world, arguably. Like back in 2004, you called out Bill O'Reilly. Some of your words are right-wing blowhard, stupendously pompous. You don't hold back.
Well, the context at the time was that there was an application from a Canadian company to carry Fox News in Canada. And I entered into this arena of debate about whether Fox News should be available in Canada. Would it have any impact? Would it influence things in Canada? by simply saying, it really, from my point of view, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing very mysterious about Fox News. It's actually hilarious. He somehow, he or his producers came across my column, and he started mocking, deriding me and the Globe and Mail, which he called a far-left newspaper. I started getting hundreds and then thousands, literally thousands of emails from O'Reilly's viewers attacking me, attacking Canada. Most of them were not printable. I mean, they were really vicious. So the Times contacted me and asked if I'd be willing to share some of the really vicious emails from O'Reilly supporters. And the piece then appeared in the Sunday New York Times in a very prominent position. And that kind of took everybody's breath away, that this fight was going on. I then got hundreds and then eventually thousands of emails from Americans, from readers of the New York Times, who were apologizing for the US, for Fox News, for Bill O'Reilly, and for those people who had attacked me. So it kind of went back and forth. And in the end, I felt that I had kind of won the argument, because those decent people in the States who saw O'Reilly for the blowhard, pompous, bullying character he is, they were apologizing for him.
Is this a TV industry issue, or is this a wider issue when it comes to women and how women are treated?
What you're talking about here really is the treatment of women in media and entertainment industries. And by tradition, those industries, though, are thought of as a sort of intense, creative, competitive workplace where allowances are made for crude things being said or done, and there isn't as much pushback about crude behavior by men towards women in those industries because allowances are made for the environment. I think this came out of the Ghomeshi situation here. We're at a tipping point and no allowances are being made. What happened in the O'Reilly and Fox News situation is that the New York Times had a tip. They had heard rumors, and they did an investigation into the circumstance of O'Reilly and Fox News and discovered that O'Reilly himself and Fox News had actually paid out many millions to women who were either working at Fox News or contributing to it in order to make them go away because they had apparently legitimate complaints. I suspect what will happen over the next few years increasingly is that in the media and entertainment world, the shutters will be kicked open. The general public and advertisers won't tolerate it. I think that
it's like
really
the power of women is rising up because there's such opposition.
Yeah.
And if you want to know what John Doyle thinks of the era of Trump and his effect on culture, go to our website for Molly's entire interview with John Doyle. Now, to Sheldon Neal, who speaks with Ryerson digital media professor Marcia Barber to help us understand the public's outcry over bad behavior.
From protests over recent pay hikes and multi-million-dollar bonuses to Bombardier executives to a United Airlines passenger captured on a cell phone as security physically dragged him off a plane, to street protests at Fox News over behavior of their biggest host. Bad behavior, is it out of control? Well, helping us understand the reasons and how we can measure standards of bad behavior in media. With me now is Marcia Barber, professor at the School of Journalism at Ryerson University. Marcia, it appears there is an upsurge, if you will, in public protests over bad behavior. Marcia, what is happening with the public and bad behavior?
Well, there's always been a reaction to bad behavior and an attempt to bring people back to current social norms. And I think what's changed is social media is available now. So that means people have 24/7 access to learning about bad behaviors. So, for example, Oscar Wilde, the 19th century writer, if he behaved badly, according to the conventions of the times, people would read about it eventually, but they wouldn't receive tweets and retweets and updates. And so today we know that when the doctor, for example, was dragged off the flight, he had a broken nose, he had a concussion, he lost a couple of teeth. And that's because people were following minute by minute what was happening with that story.
But how do we measure our standards for bad behavior?
Well, we've defined bad behavior differently through different periods of history. But the one thing those behaviors have in common, perhaps, is they contravene societal norms in some way. So if we talk about standards today, we can ask, is it legal? Is it fair? Is it equitable? Are people treating others the ways they'd want to be treated themselves? So those, I think, are some of the useful questions we can ask as we measure this.
The public often, holds famous people, whether it be movie stars, politicians, to a higher standard to follow. But when they fall, how does the public recover? And what can we do, how do we maintain that public loyalty?
Okay, well, today, when it comes to movie stars, I think there's a lot of cynicism. We're not talking about Audrey Hepburn anymore. We're talking about Lindsay Lohan. We're talking about Justin Bieber. So do we hold them to a higher standard, or on some level do we find it really interesting and titillating and to see how flawed they are? So not only does the public recover, but the appetite for tabloid news about famous people, I think it seems to be almost insatiable. However, if you want to talk about politicians, that's completely different because they're paid from the public purse, they're publicly accountable, and loyalty towards politicians requires that they do exhibit high standards of ethical behavior for re-election.
Marsha Barber, thank you so much for spending time with us. Really appreciate you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
That was Marsha Barber, professor at the School of Journalism at Ryerson University.
Coming up, a Pentecostal pastor weighs in on what it takes to be accountable and find redemption when a church leader falls from grace. And
when I get up in the morning and I'm going out of my house, I've got keys between my fingers, ready to hit someone in defense.
Too many stories to tell why young Canadian women say sexual harassment is a daily fear. Stay with us.
Here are some of the stories making headlines this week.
Voters turning their outrage into online worldwide trends.
Why healthcare workers killed.
The opioid crisis is a health crisis.
So how do we weed out the noise?
Well, this is an issue our next guest is an expert on.
We have a lineup of religious leaders from the Christian, Muslim, and Jewish faith communities.
I'm Lorna Dueck.
And I'm Sheldon Neal.
And I'm Molly Thomas.
And you're watching Context Live. Does bad behavior from people in the spotlight trickle down into a culture of harassment? Well, Molly Thomas rounded up a group of diverse women in downtown Toronto to find out.
All right, ladies, let's talk about bad behavior, okay? We've had the Bill O'Reilly scandal, right? A really late dismissal from Vox. We've had a Canadian senator in hot water over a minor here in Canada. We have had Trump's antics around women still getting him elected. I mean, does the bad behavior of these people in the spotlight trickle down to the average woman? Laxi.
Absolutely. That's my everyday punishment. Actually, a few months ago, I was in Quebec, going home, going for lunch actually with a few friends, and I was crossing the road, and this man, out of the blue, came right at me, kissed me on the lips, and my friends had to pull him off, and my only instinct was to flee, but that's not something, you think it's a surprising event, but it happens regularly.
Valerie, you're a business owner in town. You love the Leafs. You have great platinum seats, but you have an uncomfortable experience sometimes.
Yeah, I think, when you were talking about the high profile, people who get away with a lot of that type of behavior, it normalizes and allows just everyday people to feel like they can behave in the same way. So my business partner and I were watching a Leafs game, and just throughout the entire game, the person sitting next to me was a middle-aged gentleman. He just felt like it was okay every time he passed by to just sort of touch and sort of graze inappropriately and just make comments like, little lady, and allude to my ethnicity. And in the moment, I think afterwards you think about all the things you wish you had said, but in the moment you want to just enjoy the game, and you don't want to be confrontational. But you also I realized after, like, not saying something, just kind of permitted that behavior.
Elena, I want to bring you into this. You're the only one at this table that's a wife and a mother. Does that change the way men treat you?
Do you know what? I have to say I have been, for the most part, very lucky in places where I have worked. That said, I have worked many years in the creative industry. And so at that time, I was actually just engaged. You see, I have to justify my status. And at a staff holiday party, Christmas party, my boss, the owner of the company, grabbed my behind. My husband flipped out, they ended up in a fight, but it was normal behavior. That is a man who was married with children, and he used to grab breasts, grope other women, French kiss them, and that was considered normal.
How do we change this?
I have conversations with my guy friends who have locker room talks that are very similar to Trump talks. So I have chats with them because the only other thing we'd have to do is use our fists, and we can't do that, right?
I think as a girlfriend, sometimes having been on the receiving end of that kind of harassment, in the moment you're so shocked, you don't really know how to react. And as a girlfriend to my friends, if I witness it, it's something that I'm much more conscious about now to say, like, hey, are you okay? Do we need to do something about this? Do we need to say something?
I will say that with my son, he's a very lovable kid. He's 6. So, he does the pranks and the laughs and the jokes. But he loves hugging and kissing. And he loves doing that to his classmates. And we have to step in and say, you know what, that is very kind of you, but you have to ask. So at 6-year-old, I'm having that conversation with him on a weekly basis, really, saying, before you can hug another person, you're going to have to ask them, is it okay if I give you a hug?
It'll probably start with moms around the globe, to be honest, to actually change the tide of this.
Absolutely. Moms and dads.
Moms and dads.
Moms and dads. Yeah, dads. They have to hear it from both parents, from both genders.
Wow, Molly, we've come a long way, and those young women are still dealing with those various forms of harassment in their lives. Powerful stories, and I know they were not hard to find. Okay, Sheldon, what is happening on social media?
Thank you so much, Lorna. Well, looking at hashtags on this, a prominent one, hashtag Bill O'Reilly's fired party is just one hashtag that is trending as we continue to tackle the subject on bad behavior. Let's go to our first post. Some posts have used strong language. We're going to try to bring this up on screen for you. First one reads, "At last, that racist bloke got the boot." Hashtag Bill O'Reilly's fired party. Some strong language used there, as you can see on screen. I want to move to the next one. Now, this is one that I personally found quite interesting to myself. Other posts continue to call to the surface the racist characterization O'Reilly often made of people. In this case, this is Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, professor at Columbia University. Of course, this clip just was all over social media. Of course, it's gone viral. O'Reilly saying he looks like a cocaine dealer. Now, of course, this man having a PhD, being an African-American, was somewhat of a racist characterization that many, as you know, definitely frowned on. I want to move on to the next one here. Some taking somewhat more of a lighter approach. Former First Lady Michelle Obama dance, I call this. She says, "I hope I'm not too late to the hashtag Bill O'Reilly's fired party." Now, that is actually a moving graphic if you care to look at it at home. Let's go to our next and last one. Another lighter approach to this. When you get out of work and see, here's a secondary hashtag, hashtag Bill O'Reilly is over is trending. Of course, closing it off, hashtag Bill O'Reilly's fired party. For now, that is just some of the social media O'Reilly-specific fallout.
Still ahead, the Canadian Senate is pushing to oust one of their own, Senator Don Meredith, a Pentecostal pastor, for sexual misconduct. We go to the church head office to find out the rules around that.
Here are some of the stories making headlines this week.
Voters turning their outrage into online worldwide trends.
Why healthcare workers kill.
The opioid crisis is a health crisis.
So how do we weed out the noise?
Well, this is an issue our next guest is an expert on.
We have a lineup of religious leaders from the Christian, Muslim, and Jewish faith communities.
I'm Lorna Dueck.
And I'm Sheldon Neal.
And I'm Molly Thomas.
And you're watching Context Live.
I'm Molly Thomas in downtown Toronto. Today we're talking about leadership. Do people in the public eye have to adhere to a higher ethical standard? Let's find out.
People in the public sector, they have a huge responsibility.
If you found out that like your leader was, I don't know, using drugs, like if that goes out to like younger children, how are they going to take that? They're going to take, oh, if like our prime minister is using drugs, like maybe that's okay with us.
If at least they could be held to the same standard that we collectively somehow imagine, that would be perhaps a step in the right direction.
Perhaps nowhere is it more necessary for upstanding behavior than in positions of power. In the chamber of sober second thought, the Canadian Senate, the Senate ethics officer has concluded that Senator Don Meredith's alleged sexual relations with a teenage girl have breached the Senate's ethics. The Senate Ethics Committee is now pressuring Meredith to step down, but Senator Meredith is fighting against that and is now on medical leave. Joining me now to speak about the embattled senator is Reverend Alvin Nicholson, who knows him. Hello, Reverend Nicholson.
Hi, Lorna.
All right. You and Senator Meredith formed a partnership that received $3 million in government funding. You created the Down with Guns program in Toronto. It was 2 community-based pastors, yourself and Pastor Meredith, uniting for a youth anti-violence strategy. How effective was it to leverage the reputation of pastors into that?
Well, Lorna, what this enabled us to do is to bring pastors together in the first instance, to make them more aware of the root causes for violence among our young people in our communities. And we were able to do that because at the end of the period for the funds, we were able to affect 167,000 youth and their families. We engaged in 67 projects. In fact, one of the projects itself involved 1,000 young people with the police of Toronto as their mentors. So we know that there was a significant impact on the church, and in particular the churches. The leadership came together, were much more sensitive to the needs of young people, and were much more willing to address them.
And you and Senator Meredith led that, and now we have this, the same moral authority of his pastorate now being asked to resign from the Senate. What is your view of standards of conduct in the Christian church?
Well, I think it is very clear in the scripture how leaders ought to behave. In Israel, the priest was called to a higher standards. The prophets were called to a higher standards. All leadership is called to a higher standard of behavior, whether it be moral, ethical. We are all called to a higher standard of behavior. And the reason for this is that followers have a way of looking at leaders and taking a lead from them. And I believe within the church, this is an absolute necessity that we insist that as leaders, we stick to the highest possible standard of responsibility and accountability for our own behavior.
All right, and so you've reached out to Senator Meredith. Are you hoping for recovery?
Well, biblically, we are told that if someone is found in sin, in a fault, our primary responsibility is to seek restoration. The Bible clearly says that we ought to approach such a one in a spirit of meekness so that we can help reinstate them if in fact they have, as in this case we have a report. I have not personally spoken to the senator about this, but indeed my first responsibility is to seek reconciliation and restoration of a brother in Christ.
All right. Reverend Alvin Nicholson leads the African Canadian Christian Leaders Organization. Thank you for being with us.
My joy.
Well, next with us is David Wells. He is the head of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, which has over 1,100 churches, 3,500 accredited pastors, and 250,000 people. He's also served as a chaplain for the Olympics, the Pan Am Games, the Commonwealth Games. Reverend Wells, welcome here.
Great to be with you, Lorna.
Okay, we heard a lot about Senator Meredith's title as a Pentecostal pastor. Is he accredited with your denomination?
He's not accredited with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, but we do take seriously, of course, when clergy's in the news. It reflects back to us, and we look again at ourselves and our processes and what are we doing to ensure leaders live the life.
What are you doing for that? Like, what is the standard that the church asks of its leaders?
In our fellowship and in a lot of sister organizations that I am pleased to be a part of, we do have high standards that are established. You don't want to read bylaw 10.6 right now, but most of us are very aware of it, and it is based on biblical understandings of a person's life who follows Jesus, but then especially leaders. And based on that, we establish a ministerial code of ethics. We have an entire ministerial code of ethics that our credential holders check off on every year, and it touches on all sorts of practical areas of life as well. And then we do a lot of proactive ongoing instruction and teaching and talking about real practical things so that leaders know expectations about how they should live.
And why is it so important that the church's leaders have such a high standard?
Well, the understanding underneath it all is that you are representing Jesus, first of all, as a person, but you're also representing the church, that he wants his life, his love, his grace, the purity of who he is to be represented. And I personally, and when we mess up within our own fellowship of churches, I personally grieve that we mar the image of Jesus by our behaviors that don't match what he's called us to do.
Recovery. You also work on recovery. What have you learned about that?
Well, I always am very clear on the fact that the scriptures say, if anyone thinks you stand, you better take heed lest you fall. And if you're going to restore someone, do it in a spirit of meekness. So first of all, there's an overarching attitude of humility that I'm looking for and that I want to have myself. But then I also believe in those great words like restorative and redeem, and the scriptures are full of those kind of words. Why is that? Because that's exactly what God can do in a person's life. So personally, I've had the joy, as of other colleagues of mine, of leading literally dozens and dozens of people, men and women, through processes where they address the brokenness in their life, the hurt that they did, and we lead them through either 1 year or 2 year processes where they're accountable and they deal with what was it that led to their downfall, what's the root causes, how do we support them, if they have family, their family, how do we see them restored back to what God always intended to see done through their lives. And I've seen multiple cases of restoration. So there is hope in this story because of who God is, even as I've been listening to the different stories, personally I've been grieving because I've been at tables where I've heard of that kind of abuse or I've heard of those kind of broken moments, and I know it breaks the heart of God, so it has to break our heart. But then he comes as a redeemer and he restores hope, both for those who have suffered through abusive relationships or wrong actions, but also those who are the offenders. He can find the Peters and make them whole again.
Well, Reverend David Wells, the Superintendent of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, I'm glad to hear that those 3,500 pastors and 1,100 churches have that kind of rationale behind them. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Well, how about a spotlight on good conduct? Take the case of Becca Schofield, who celebrated her last radiation treatment by encouraging people to reach out with random acts of kindness, and the challenge has gone viral. Why do we all want to be a better person? That craving comes from the designer of the human race, and God equips us for do-overs. Admitting we're wrong and that we need God's forgiveness is the only way to get past ourselves. One-on-one with God is the safest place to have that conversation. Don't delay it. Well, for all of us, I'm Lorna Duick at Context. Thank you for joining us. Check out the rest of our stories on our website. We'll see you again next week.